I'm Alex from SaaScribe, so just that's a very quick intro for me. We just heard from Janna Bastow from ProdPad and our two other special guests tonight. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. My name is Duane Jackson. I founded a company called Kashflow with a K and an uppercase F. It was important. It was a SaaS accounting software company, but when I founded it in 2005, the term SaaS wasn't really around. I remember writing a blog post speculating on what phrase we'd use, and I got it wrong. But I sold that 2 years ago, and now working on a new idea that I might tell you about if you ask me later.
I'm Paul, founder CEO of a company called Geckoboard based here in London. It's a SaaS tool that allows you to pull important metrics together onto one dashboard and put it up in your office wall. We're 28 people, founded in 2010 actually, when I got the idea first of all, started charging for the product a year later. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So, first question. Finding product market fit is the first or only thing that matters for startups. Would you agree, and why? Let's start with you, Paul.
So the term product market fit, I think, as Janna and John actually alluded to, it's a tricky thing to grasp and get hold of. So let's strip it away. Product, I think we all have a fairly good idea of what product might and might not be. Maybe Janna has more sophisticated or subtle views on that. Market, though, that's tricky. What is market? How do we define market? What does that mean? I mean, if I was creating a new search engine, I'm going up against Google, right? They're a dominant player in the market, and I'd be trying to steal market share from them.
So you're DuckDuckGo.
Yeah, you're the DuckDuckGo, and you try and get it. You differentiate your offering against the main player. You've got the the challenger brand sort of thing going on. If you're creating a new market, that's a very different thing. If you're trying to replace something that isn't neatly categorized in a market, so I think that's something that we've struggled with at Geckoboard a lot over the years, is what is our market? I mean, it's so stratified and diverse that it's insane, actually, because we have tiny startups, maybe 1 or 2 man band, huge government agencies, big logos. We're working in healthcare, finance, automotive, pharmaceuticals, technology. So what's a market in that sense, and how do you stitch that together? So going back to the original question, product market fit, I'm not really sure I actually get what that is yet. And maybe that's different for different companies, but I mean, it's a tricky thing to be able to define and grasp hold of, let alone say, yes, we've reached product market fit. If you're selling into a market and you believe you can grow and define a market, that's a very different thing.
Just now, thank you.
Sorry.
To the fire one, no longer than 60 seconds, so hopefully it's not a real one.
Yeah, sorry, I can't give you a neat answer to that question.
No, it's fine. Duane?
I don't think I've got a neat answer either. It is hard to define what it is. If we're saying that you need to make sure you've got a product that you can sell again and again before you scale up, I think that's common sense rather than product market fit. And if it's something beyond that, I wouldn't lose sleep over it, to be honest.
So I guess, I mean, perhaps there's a lot of startups that are here, or I mean, generally, that are reading everything, what Mark Andreessen said, what Ben Horowitz said, what Brad Feld said, obsessing about we need to find product market fit, but actually, I guess when you started Kashflow, you probably weren't obsessing, you just had a common sense, I need to build something that...
Well, no, I used to think over the last few years how much easier it would have been if that kind of stuff was there. And actually, some of it, but a lot of it, no, because otherwise you just get paralysed by reading all this stuff and worrying about stuff that we're not even sure how to define it. I think most people will probably struggle to define exactly what product market fit is very succinctly, and have at least half of the rest of the audience agree.
I think, Janna, you agree with that.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with that. And I think before you even begin thinking about product market fit, which is one of those big, hairy, audacious goals, you know, you may as well say, yeah, build something that somebody's going to acquire one day. Great, good way to start, but not necessarily the most helpful way. The way that I usually recommend starting is just saying, you know, what problem are we trying to solve? And making sure that you're solving real user problems that people will pay for. That's problem solution fit. And finding the market after that, well, that's a much bigger question that you're probably going to take a few years to figure out who those people are and how you can best sell to them.
Okay, thank you. So we saw in John's presentation, he talked about some of the channels that helped him, you know, on the way, you know, whether it's quite product market fit, but certainly we saw PR, webinars, cold emails, etc. Something I read about you, Paul, was that I don't know whether it was you released the beta or something on Hacker News. You had 850 sign-ups in the first day or something like that. So I guess the question is to all three. I guess Paul, if you want to start, you know, is how much did sort of channels such as Hacker News or other channels help you to get to, you know, product market fit?
Yes, that was back in 2010. I think, you know, Hacker News is morphed, and maybe Product Hunt is maybe more of an analog to what that was back then. Hacker News was great for us, but it wasn't great for, I mean, I don't know how many of those original customers, I think I did some analysis a couple of years ago, but how many of those original testers? This was, bear in mind, 3 months after I had the idea. This was just getting that initial reaction, that initial feedback. And it was very useful for that specific purpose. For paying the bills, it was bugger all use, you know, because these people, like, they came in, and I think exactly has been referred to earlier on. You've got early adopters, people who like testing things, people who like breaking things, and that was very useful for what we needed at that point in time. We had a bare bones product, and we wanted to see, well, is there any utility? Can anyone see that this solves this problem for them? And yes, we got 850 on that day alone. I think by the time we came out of beta, yeah, there was 9,000. We had 9,000 people sign up for the beta. It was mind blowing, but a lot of that was like people just wanting to kick the tires. People wanting to try something new out. A lot of people were enticed by the way the product looked, and they thought it looked cool. And we still battle with that today. You know, the product looks great, and so people want something that looks great on their wall. But we know, for example, that unless they have, I mean, I think Duane was saying, yeah, it looked cool, that's why we had a Geckoboard up in the office. But like, we know that if people put a bunch of crappy vanity metrics on there, they're not going to be a customer in 6-12 months' time. They're not. They need to really think about what are the metrics that they want on there. Then they go through the process of getting that data on there. Then it offers utility. That's the aha moment. That's when they're truly activated. But yeah, in your question about channels, my theory on that is that there is no magic channel that's going to deliver you a large amount of sustainable growth. You've got to keep plugging away at a whole bunch of things. Something that's working today is not going to work in 2 or 3 months or 6 months' time. It'll tap out, or you'll reach some kind of funny economy of kind of, you know, you throw so much money at it maybe that begins to, you know, the impact of it begins to die off. But I don't know yet, you know, what our most sustainable channel is. I know a lot of people come to us by word of mouth and hearing from other customers and our content. But it's about keeping plugging away and trying to find as many and as diverse a range of things and be prepared for that to change.
Yeah, Duane, I mean, I guess a comment onto the channel strategy for Kashflow.
So early on we had to do a lot of stuff that just isn't scalable, and I knew it wasn't scalable at the time. And that's going to, whether it be events like this and meeting people and telling them about the product and almost making sales there and then and getting people, encouraging people to sign up. And I knew that's not going to work once we get bigger. But that all goes back to what we were saying earlier about speaking to your customers and potential customers. That's so vital. But the other, I think, interesting point that you're alluding to there is, so Google AdWords worked for us. Any other channel we used was going to be more expensive, and we found a few channels that worked. And the next channel was even more expensive and even more expensive. So it changes all the time, and you're constantly having to pay more and more. And it's a question of how much you're willing to pay for your customers. Are you willing to pay more than 1 year's income from them. And early on, you don't know the lifetime value of your customer, so it's really hard to work out how much am I willing to pay for a customer.
Okay. And Janna, I know you commented on some channels in your presentation. You also mentioned the, let's say, other businesses, but the event side of things that you do. How much of those are, you know, a good channel for ProdPad?
Events have played a small part in it. It's always nice. I mean, the events are great for being able to talk to people, not necessarily customers. So people are outside of the realm of already using your product, which is hugely important. You know, one of the problems with talking with people who are already using your product is that they're kind of already bought in, and they're just, you know, they might be telling you nice things to justify the fact that they're paying you $100 a month already. Whereas if you talk to people who don't use your product, who've never heard of you, they ask the really tough questions, and you learn a lot more from them. And I mean, our early acquisition channels were simply, you know, SEO, just people looking for solutions. And, you know, when we first started building this thing, we had no idea if there was a market. No one else is doing product management software. If you looked that up, there are no actual results. So it was very easy to get to the top of those results, but like 10 people were looking for it. That's changed over the years, which has kind of helped us grow the business. But when we first started, we didn't know our lifetime value, and we didn't want to spend money on, you know, trying to get people in. We didn't have money. So we just sort of kept going in this organic sense and talking to people at events and, you know, trying to do the sales pitch at events or anybody who would listen. And, you know, that really helped us figure out who we could talk to and how they talk back to us and what kind of things we could be answering.
Okay, thanks. And, well, I guess, you know, you've made the comment that product market fit is fairly sort of arbitrary, right? You know, what is it? But imagining we know what it is effectively, you know, what was your key company focus before product market fit, if you found it and know what it is, and key company focus after product market fit? So I'll start with you, Janna, first.
Mm-hmm. So one of the things we started off with, and I said to my co-founder Simon, I was like, look, I'm not starting a startup, I'm starting a business. I don't want to start something that's dependent on us hoping to recoup the cost later and create a free version and maybe we'll get enough users to sell something. We started selling it from day one, so there was never a free version. You know, so our first thing was, how much money can we get? And I remember when we had our first like $200 a month. I was like, this is great, let's go spend this on like half a dev for half a day a week. You know, that was a big milestone for us. We've just focused on getting customers in the door and getting people to actually pay for it and validate what we're working on. And as for, you know, aftermarket fit, you know, to be honest, we're not there yet. You know, we're not at the point that we can just say, yeah, let's just get 10 more salespeople and, you know, get 10x the sales. We're not sure how to do that yet, and we're working towards that.
Okay, thanks. Duane?
Yeah, thinking about it now, I think maybe product market fit found us. So when I started out, we weren't looking to build up, doing the same as someone was doing earlier, saying we as me. But I think we all do that. I all do that. But I didn't start out to build an accounting software product, and I think if I did, I'd have been intimidated by the idea and probably wouldn't have done it. I started out just to solve one problem, which was around invoicing. And then through speaking to customers, it's, can we add this? This little feature would really be nice. Someone's cancelled, why have you cancelled? Because you haven't got that. Hold on a minute, work for the weekend, come back, we've got it now. And customers go and evangelise about it. But we kept adding more and more features until I thought, hang on a minute, if we just add this and this, we're a fully blown accounting software package. So yeah, I think product market fit found us. Maybe that's why I haven't got a clue what it is.
And were you thinking, like John said, you know, when you start with a business idea, you think, you know, do you really like your customers and can you spend 3 days with them? Were you thinking about spending 3 days at accounting conferences? And
thankfully, our customers weren't accountants, and so I love SMEs and I spend time around SMEs. But the thing with accountants, they did become sort of responsible for 50% of our revenues. You can slag them off to their faces because they think you're talking about all the other accountants, not them. Every accountant thinks they're the special one that's not like the rest of them.
And Paul?
Yeah, I think the phases of our company, I think initially I created the product because I felt like hurry up and start waiting around. Because I felt like the product needed to exist, and I wanted to be the one who helped bring it in, you know, bring it into existence in a way. Has the emphasis changed? I mean, I don't know if we're at some arbitrary measure of product market fit. I know that we have, we've got thousands of customers, and they're paying us, everything from like small, tiny firms to large government agencies. I don't like the idea of kind of trying to define. This sounds like really wiggly, but I'm just being honest. I don't like the idea of trying to define, this is a market, we're going after this type of person. That hasn't worked for us. Going after this type of thing, this is a market, this is how we size it. Actually, there is a very real problem that like many different functions and many different types of organizations are trying to tackle. How we go about solving that problem has changed over the years, and we're still working on it. I don't know if we're at product market fit, so I'm not sure if we're switching gears, but we're trying a whole bunch of different things.
Okay, thank you. Right, so I guess, whether you know you're at product market fit or not, it's hard to perhaps answer, but the key metrics that you focus on, trying to get to product market fit, or the equivalent of what it is to you. What are the key metrics? And I'll start with you.
Okay, so key metrics that we measure, probably all the same thing you guys do. Monthly recurring revenue and churn rates and conversion, so trial to paid conversion rates. Get those three in the right spot and, changes all your numbers and it's magic. Other things we look at is, how active are these users? We're trying to come up with like a usage score for where this customer might be 12 months down the line. See if you can find leading indicators for this person actually churning before they do. As well as customer satisfaction rates, so measure NPS, or measure how happy they are with their support tickets, or measure how many bugs they're reporting. Stuff like this that we're trying to throw in there and make sense of to figure out how we can change those key metrics like churn and retention and conversion.
So on the metrics front, I think the one that we measured that would be close to this, and we've really screwed you up with your questions all around product market fit. We'll confess we don't know what it is. But this
doesn't exist.
I think it does, but it's elusive, and I don't think you've got it until a year or two after you've got it. But I think the one thing we were measuring, that we started measuring, that is relevant to whatever product market fit was time to value for the customers. So at what point do they, or it's in the free trial, or even after they've started paying, start seeing value from your product? And we identified what it was in the system. So for us, it was creating an invoice, a real one, so not a customer service test company, a real invoice and sending it out. How soon do they do that? And then actually what we started calling is when they do their second one, because that was when they've seen the value recognised and using the system properly. And once we realised that was an inflection point for them, we then worked on what we can do to shorten the amount of time it takes from someone signing up to trial to sending out their first invoice.
People?
Yeah, I mean, MRR, churn, customer churn, MRR churn, all those kind of things. But I think from a product and are we solving some real need? It's activation. So we define activation. Well, we went on a big project last year to try and define activation. We came up with a fairly complex set of scenarios that we know that 80% of people who do this kind of thing go on to become customers, and 80% of people who don't do this kind of things or more don't go on to become customers. And we're able to kind of find that out through just looking at data. But now we have an engagement score. We have an engagement score that's plotted, and actually, we did a big feature release a couple of weeks ago. We completely revamped one of our integrations, Google Sheets, and we're able to plot like engagement of people who used this integration before, and then now you see what their engagement is like. This is halfway through their free trial. And see what their engagement is like. Now that we've released this, it's completely revamped product feature, we're able to see whether it's having a positive or negative impact. And that's, if you get one that's a good predictor of customer happiness. So we have, again, this measure stolen from HubSpot, but the customer Chi, customer happiness index, that takes in frequency and recency of usage. And you can plot that, and you can break that into cohorts, and you can break that into like what part of the what features they're using, whatnot. You can begin to have a leading metric on MRR, which is great from a like a planning point of view, and great from a knowing what's coming next, and great from a board point of view. We believe we're making things better, or we don't. This initiative didn't work. So activation. Our activation is one thing. It's not going to be the same as these guys' activation is or anyone else's, but trying to find out what that activation metric is.
And can I just share something based on a connection I just made with something Duane said, which was this time to value. Read something recently, and here's a couple examples from companies we definitely have made product market fit. Slack does something similar. Everybody here uses Slack now? Yeah, pretty much. What they do is they say, I think it was something like 2,000 messages or 5,000 messages. As soon as a team has had X thousand messages, then that is when they're addicted, they're in. And they know that, so the goal is just to get them to send that many messages, and they focused everything on that, and that seems to have worked. The other one was Facebook. Facebook's first goal when you're a first new user is just get you 10 friends. They don't care who, just 10 friends, and they can take it from there. And that's when somebody becomes, a user of Facebook and stays around. Before you've done those first 1,000 messages or 2,000 or whatever it was, or before you have 10 friends, the tools don't have value. So I think that actually makes a lot of sense. That's my key learning for tonight, is find time to value.
Yeah, I would just say like a note of caution on that, and that's getting to those 2,000 messages is a representation of value. If you try and goose that number, what you're going to end up, or game it too heavily, where you can force people down paths that they're not want to, that doesn't actually show any real utility in the product, if that's what you're focusing on gaining. Now, to see it as, is this a measure of our success or not? I think those kind of activation metrics are real. But one thing that we've tried very hard to do is say, okay, well, that's gives some indication to us that this is useful to a set of customers. But if we try and get people to do that, which we can by a couple of like dark or spammy ways of getting people to log in their second week, oh, look what you've missed, or something like that. But that's not that. It's correlation, not causation.
Okay, thanks. So I'm going to ask one or two more questions before putting it out to the audience. So I guess everything we've heard or discussed tonight so far, if we're giving away some sort of key takeaways, learnings, either that maybe you've learned through exiting your business, growing your business to the stage it is sort of now, or even if you've learned something tonight, that you feel is important, let's say for early stage startups, around the whole, subject of product market fit. What is kind of, your one sort of bit of advice around this subject if you starting your own, SaaS company today or early stage?
I would take a leaf out of John's book, speak to 354 customers in a year. Do that. Yeah, speak to someone every day. I mean, that's I think that's going to pay dividends.
And Duane?
Mine will be don't overlook old school marketing methods. So everyone gets obsessed with Google AdWords, email marketing, and we thought we'd try as an experiment doing some junk mail in the post, because you don't really get much anymore. And it worked for us for quite a while. And PR, the traditional style PR, well, traditional-ish. But yeah, that all works. It's a lot of stuff that people overlook and think isn't relevant anymore, but it still works.
For me, pay attention to the people who aren't buying your product, that 95% or 90% or whatever number it is who start trials but don't pay. This is a gold mine of people who once found you and have tons of reasons as to why they didn't stick around. Go find out what those are and what you can do to make it better next time they start a trial.
Okay, thanks. And I guess the last question before we put it out to the audience is just for Duane. So are you allowed to tell us what you're doing next, and do you want to plug your book at all?
Okay, cheers. Right. Yeah, no, I can tell you my next thing. The reason I'm not, and maybe this might be useful for you guys as well, if you ever want TechCrunch right away about what you're doing, make sure you give them an exclusive. And they're much more likely to write about something that's exclusive, because they're going to write exclusive on it. That's why I've been caging. But it's Supdate, supdate.com. It's business progress reporting, so even more boring than accounting. But in a nutshell, you've got lots of businesses that are taking seed money and then either doing a really poor job of updating their investors or not doing it at all, and often for good reasons. And the idea is it will hopefully make that a lot easier. I can plug the book. I wrote a book called 4,000 Days, which I'm not sure how much useful business stuff there is in there.
I haven't seen any useful business stuff yet.
No, it's mainly drug trafficking and prison.
You're in prison at the moment.
Yeah.
Well, not now,
but you need to go and really get out of prison. Yeah, it's just the background of I was arrested for drug trafficking as a teenager, served a long prison sentence, and then started my business when I got out. There's a fair amount in the background of business, and people have told me they do get business value from it, but I think the first half's the more fun part of the book, to be honest. So if you want a good read, yes, 4,000 days. If you want business insight, buy something else.
Okay, all right, so let's do some questions then.
Quick question for all three of you. Do you guys currently require credit card for your trials? Because I know that has a pretty big effect on like conversion. So like Janna, for you, when you say 40%, is that requiring credit card up front, or is it like truly free trial?
So in our case, at one point in time, we did have it set up that way just because technically it's easier to set it up when we're doing our first billing system, and that was suicide. Like, no one paid. One person did, and I think he did it by accident. I'm not sure what happened. So no, we got rid of that really quickly and started testing different trial times and still ongoing testing trial times and how we can actually make that more interesting, but never requiring credit card up front. It just turns people off.
Yeah, I think that the less you require up front, the better. We never quite got there, but we were planning on getting it to, you don't even need your email address. You can click a button, it'll instantly create your account. You can start entering data, but then it will warn you that you need to claim this account by giving us your email address before you disappear. But we never got around to trying it.
Yeah, I have some data on this because we did try it back in 2011. Yes, conversion rate was ludicrously high. There was something up around 40%, but 30-day or 3-month churn was also ludicrously high because people go, shit, these people are charging my credit card. I haven't used this past day one. We can, after running again, I ran the numbers and I saw that. Even if you take account of the fact of that churn and the people actually more people signed up when there was no credit card required, and even though there was a lower conversion rate, a higher number of people came out the other end of it.
So it worked for you?
No. So with no credit card, higher number of sign-ups, even though it had a lower conversion rate, more people came out the end of it. Yeah.
Hiya. When you're targeting multiple verticals, have you been tempted to kind of just drop a number of them to try and get kind of product market fit, or to try and improve your marketing and go big on a niche? Or have you found any good tricks for talking to multiple verticals and not alienating parts of your audience?
I'm happy to start on this one. Yeah, so this is, I kind of alluded to it earlier. Sophia, our ex-head of marketing and growth, is here. She started her own startup, but this is an intractable problem for us. So many, like I said, very diverse group of companies, job functions, whatever else. We've completely moved away from trying to target people by vertical or by job function now. We're using the jobs to be done framework to say, okay, these are the jobs that we solve for people, and try to articulate that, and that cuts across industries and job function and company size, and we found it works better for us. I guess it depends on the type of product you're creating, what sort of market that is, but for us we found it was way too stratified, way too diverse. It's like a mosaic if you cut it by job function and industry. It was too difficult.
All right, on my side, we don't, so with our product, our focus is on a particular job title. So product management is kind of horizontal. You could be a product manager for a toy manufacturer and do the same stuff with, as a product manager who's a PM at a mobile app site. So we haven't really focused on any particular industry vertical. I'm not sure, we haven't really tried anything around that. Frankly, people have just been looking up stuff like, how do I roadmap, or questions like that, and they find us. So that's very focused on the title itself.
Any other questions?
Hey, actually this is not a question, it's more of a response to the guy in the back who was asking about a credit card up front. I just wanted to Yeah, just mentioned that we have credit card up front. About 40% of people who sign up end up converting to customers. About 1.5% of people come to the website and end up signing up credit card. It's true that there is some resistance towards using credit card, but we found it works better for us because then we don't have to chase people in their trials. And given that we're a small team, it just works that much better that way for us. And we did try having no credit card for about a couple of months last year, and yeah, overall conversion rates just went down. It wasn't good for us, so we stuck with credit card. So I guess you should try both.
One more question?
Given that the barriers to entry for SaaS software now are lower than they've ever been, and you see more and more companies coming to market, I'm guessing in all of these areas, how much effort do you actually put into tracking your competitors, either benchmarking or keeping an eye on what they're doing, looking at their features, or even testing their products and seeing how they compare against yours?
I certainly keep an eye on them, but you've also got to bear in mind that the image you get externally of any company is very different to what's going on internally. But yeah, I'd certainly keep an eye on the features they release. And what used to annoy me was I see them, a competitor release a feature that we've had for 2 years, and everyone will be talking about it. But a lot of this goes back to what's been mentioned a few times. So I'm a technical founder, and there's some real downsides of that. And one is that I didn't have much of a focus on the UI. So when they released the feature that we already had, we'd then change our UI because we've seen how they've done it. And all our customers go, oh, love the new feature. We've had it there for 2 years, but we just hadn't surfaced it very well. So I was always happy to take inspiration from our competitors and vice versa. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
I call that benchmarking. I'm probably not as analytical about it as I could be. I actually learn a lot about my competitors by talking to other people and saying, well, this is what we do. And then I wait and listen to say, oh, is that like X? Like, oh, that's interesting that you think that. Okay, and I'll go look that person up or kind of log that as a little tick next to them. But probably not as analytically, looking at feature by feature or tracking traffic on their site. There's a few tools out there, and it's mostly comparing your vanity stats versus their vanity stats, which isn't particularly helpful. But if anybody has solutions on how they do that, if there is a better way of tracking competitors these days, I'd love to know about it.
No, is the answer. I don't spend a lot of time looking at competitors. I think there's a couple of reasons for that. First of all, I did in the early days and saw competitors come up, and then I saw them implode and disappear, and I think about all the wasted mental energy that I spent on that. Second of all, I think we're not trying to displace a competitor. Like I said, if I was trying to build a search engine, I'd be concerned about share of market, all that kind of stuff. I'm more trying to convince people to stop using Excel for something that it wasn't used for, data communication, or it wasn't built for, and start using something that is built for data communication. So, however big the market is today, I truly believe it's a fraction of what it's going to be in a few years' time. So it's up to me, it's up to us as a business to define that market and define what the parameters are of that. And that has its own set of challenges. But yeah, worrying about competitors, it's wasted mental energy as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I'm going to second that one. I mean, when we first started this thing, no one was doing product management software, and I thought, oh man, maybe this is a really bad idea. Because if no one is doing this, maybe there's no market there at all. But we gave it a go. Now, whenever I see a new competitor building something with the same kind of keywords as us, I kind of welcome it, because all of a sudden it's like, well, if you want an alternative to that, then there's us. People start going, oh, maybe I need a tool like this. Our biggest competitor is still Google Docs and Excel and stuff like that. We spend most of our time actually trying to convince people that they do need a tool like this and that there are tools like this besides Excel and PowerPoint and whatnot. And so it actually makes our life a lot easier if people just start going, oh yeah, I actually need software like this. I'm just going to look it up day one.
All right. I think on that note, a round of applause for our panel guests.